The Moondrop Chu was the big introduction to sci-fi for a lot of listeners. Sure, there were some offerings from KZ before that, but they had issues with overblown bass and harsh treble. So the first Chu brought a more balanced yet fun sound to the table for just around 20 bucks. There were some things about the tuning that could have been better though, so expectations were kinda high for the second iteration, the Chu 2. So let's find out if Moondrop listened to the community and if the Chu 2 can deliver on that. So as usual, starting with build quality here. The Chu 2 features a light metal body with the typical Chu shape. Yeah, the aesthetics are pretty much reminiscent of the first version 2. You have this kind of picture here, the plant, the star explosion. It's smaller than on the first one though. This one here has a bigger, just black finish there. So it's a little bit less fancy. Quality itself feels really solid and it can certainly take a fall. Yeah, and it does not feel cheap for the price. Cable is, I think, maybe a little worse than similar priced IEM cables. The thing is, it does not feel like it breaks instantly. It actually feels kind of sturdy. It just feels really not flexible too. It feels kind of different than the usual IM cables that we get and know and everything. Still, in contrast to the first Shure, at least here the cable is detachable. So you can buy a new one if you do not like the stock one. But it's okay, it's just like not the best cable. And the overall build quality, especially of the IMs, is really good. Comfort wise, the Chu 2 offers a light and comfortable fit, and I especially like the secure fit without feeling of pressure or discomfort. Like the ear tips you get with the Chu 2 are really nice, and I got a good seal nearly instantly. Actually, nothing much more to say here. They are really comfortable and I don't have anything to criticize here. So let's just put all the stuff nobody wants to hear behind us and let's go on with sound. So the first Chu had kind of a V-shaped sound signature. The bass was a little boosted, the highs were a little boosted, but a lot of listeners took some issues with that. Bass was still not really strong enough, and in contrast to that, the treble was too much, so it sounded maybe a little thin, a little harsh. And hey, Moondrop listened. The second Chu has more bass and is all in all a much less fatiguing listen. So again, bass is nicely boosted here, but nowhere near overwhelming. In fact, and since I did not listen to the first Chu, now I can imagine the old version with having less bass than this one must have sounded kind of bright and thin. So I'm glad that they changed it here, because the bass here is really not, it's there, it's kind of really present, but it's still nowhere near too much or something. Sub bass is nicely present here, but they did elevate the mid bass section too here, so it counters the brighter sound that the first one had. And here it sounds just full and really punchy and does not get into the way of the mid-range. Bass overall stays clean though, and different bass instruments do not meld together, and bass guitars and kick drums have a really nice punch to them. Going into the mid-range, it's well balanced for a V-shaped IEM. It's still a bit recessed, especially when looking at the bass presence. I've seen comments about the upper mid-range being shouty or having too much energy, and I can't really hear that. While there is a certain aggressiveness in voices and electric guitars, to me they do not really sound harsh, or they do not have this tinny element to them that you get when you have like too big of an elevation in that frequency range. There's just more energy there, but I kind of like that. Like, that's the part of the frequency response where a lot of the clarity of voices and instruments is. And if you have a bass boost like the Chu 2 has, there you need some more energy there to cut through the bass and to not sound distant, and the Chu 2 does that pretty well without going overboard and getting edgy or annoyingly shouty. It is a little recessed in the center mid range, so there is some hollowness sometimes, and instruments do not sound completely natural. like they have a slightly artificial sound to them sometimes. And additionally, I do find that male vocals could sound a little fuller, but this is really nitpicky, though all in all, it's done pretty nice for a V-shape. Going into the treble, I think this is kind of the only part of the frequency response where it sounds a little cheap, like it is neither too bright nor too laid back for my ears, but it sounds a little grainy. Like this is difficult to explain, but like there are some harsh points you can pick out sometimes and it goes kind of up and down. Looking at static on a TV, in a sound version, it almost sounds like a little fuzzy sometimes. But most of the times I don't even notice it. It's just when you really try to analyze stuff. Good thing though, they toned down the treble because people said the first Chu was too bright, so the Chu 2 is a safer option now. There are also no sibilant vocals here or piercing sounds, which is really nice, but I kinda miss some brilliance and just like a little upper treble. It's nothing that really bothers me when listening to music with these. It just makes, for example, female voices sound less emotional, and cymbals are just sometimes a little bland, and just the treble as a whole is just not perfectly extended. But I'm pretty nitpicky here again. The treble is all in all is nicely done, especially when you look at the price tag. And people who are into smoother sounding treble will like the Chu 2 more than they did the first one. Actually, for what you pay here, the Chu 2 follows the path that Moondrop laid out like a year ago with the first Chu, so making music sound balanced yet still fun for a small price. Imaging and separation in music is what you can expect for the price. Nothing special, but it works well though. The soundstage is pretty close and intimate, and especially in gaming I found it kinda difficult to really hear distances, and just the overall directional audio was not that special. All in all, I really like what they did with the Chu 2. You have this nice, energetic yet smooth sound signature that works with many genres. The thing is that the competition is much stronger than it was when the first Chu was released, and I just think that the Chu 2 is not that special anymore when looking at other IEMs in this price range. Still, again, the tuning is quite good. It will be safe for most listeners, and it's worth a try when you're looking for a clear sounding IEM that is still smooth with punchy bass. Many comparisons to be made here. First, let's start with the Truthear Hola. The Hola has less bass but also less upper mid-range, so it's an all in all softer sound, but it also has weaker treble and just sounds overall less energetic. Overall in technical performance, I think the Chu 2 is better here. Just maybe when you're like focused on mid-range, then the Hola could be a little better. You know, it's not as much of a V shape as the Chu. All in all, I really like the Chu more here. Going on with the 7Hz Zero. The Zero has way less bass and kind of the same energy in the upper mid range, so it sounds harsher to my ears. It does have better treble extension though, and just a more present mid-range. Again, it's not a V shape, it's more neutrally tuned. Also here, maybe if I think the technical performance of the 7Hz Zero is better than of the Chu, but just for listening purposes, I like the Chu more. Next, the Tangzu Waner. The Waner is even smoother than the Chu, but sounds a little less clear than the Chu 2. It has less upper but more center mid-range, and because of the mid-bass hump and everything, it just sounds more dense. Like if you want a more mid-range focused IEM, the Tangzu Waner is really good without sacrificing treble or bass or anything. The Chu 2 does have better bass quality. Like with the Tangzu, again, it gets smoothed over a lot, and this is not happening as much with the Chu 2. Next one is the KZ ZVX. It's kind of similar tuned, but I like the Chu 2 more. It sounds less harsh with more sub bass, and it's just an overall more pleasant sound to listen to. It's important to mention here, the Chu 2 is way more comfortable than the CVX. Last one, the Kiwi Ears Dolce. The Dolce is more extreme in its V-shaped sound signature, so it has more bass, more treble, which could either be too much for some listeners. Like with the Chu 2, they still try to keep some balance here. With the Dolce, although you still have kind of a nice mid-range there, you have noticeably more bass, and again, the treble was just too much for me, kind of sibilant and piercing from time to time. You do not really get this with the Chu 2. Although I think the Dolce has a little bit better technical performance. Like, although it has a bigger amount of bass, it's still nicely separate there like it doesn't for the price. It does not melt together. You still have a nice separation, everything. It's not as fuzzy in the treble and overall in the just separation of stuff. It's a little better than the Chu 2, I would say. But again, the tuning is kind of a hit or miss there. And that's it with this review. I hope you got some information out of that. And yeah, could help you with your decision to buy or not to buy the Chu 2. Tell me everything in the comments and have a nice day.